Bienvenidos. Welcome to our Spring 2026 concert, celebrating the life and music of Carlos Guastavino. Tonight, we gather to explore the mystery of creativity, that elusive spark that has inspired countless artists and visionaries throughout history. This year, we're shining a spotlight on Guastavino's remarkable songs, particularly his 1975 masterful work, Cuatro Sonetos de Quevedo. This song cycle was inspired by the 17th century Spanish poet Francisco de Quevedo y Villegas, whose words resonated deeply with Guastavino across time and space from Spain's Golden Age. In Cuatro Sonetos de Quevedo, Guastavino sets the poet's sonnets to music in the traditional form of European art songs, weaving a rich tapestry of emotions in his familiar neo-romantic, rich, melodic and harmonic language. Notably, this song cycle marks a pivotal moment in Guastavino's career, as it was the last major work he composed before a long period of creative silence that would last until the late 1980s. We're thrilled to introduce baritone Andrew Konapak and pianist William Shee performing Cuatro Sonetos de Quevedo.
primavera no de más que el color que tienes fuera estando en una parte tan dichosa. Siempre verde será, siempre olorosa, aunque despoje el cielo la ribera, triunfarás del invierno y de la espera, envidiada de mí, por venturosa. Quando caísse de su frente bella, no te tuve por flor que como cielo, no esperaba yo de sino una estrella, mas pues cuando se cae la flor al suelo, muestra que el fruto viene atrás ella. Ver que te vi caer me da consuelo. Tras arder siempre, nunca consumirme, y tras siempre llorar, nunca cantarme, tras tanto caminar, nunca cansarme, y tras siempre vivir, jamás morirme. Después de tanto mal no arrepentirme, tras tanto engaño no les engañarme, después de tantas penas no alegrarme, y tras tanto dolor nunca reírme. En tantos laberintos no perderme, ni haber tras tanto olvido recordado. Que fin alegre puede prometerme. Antes muerto estaré que escarmentado, yo no pienso tratar de defenderme, sino de ser de veras desdichado. Ese color de rosa y de azucena, y ese mirar sabroso, dulce, honesto,
Thank you so much for joining us today. Sonus relies on contributions of people like you to help make this festival and competition possible. Your contribution of any amount will help us continue in our mission to disseminate the music of these wonderful artists. Please visit our website, www.sonusinternationalmusicfestival.org, to make your tax-deductible contribution today. Thank you.
Throughout history, composers and interpreters have been inspired by beautiful melodies and compositions, transcribing them for new mediums. A pioneer and master of transcription was Hungarian piano virtuoso and composer Franz Liszt, who performed his arrangements of songs and operas during his legendary European tours. Liszt's transcriptions showcased his technical mastery and introduced his contemporaries' works to wider audiences. Following in Liszt's footsteps, American piano virtuoso and composer Earl Wild created his own masterful transcriptions, including 7 virtuoso etudes inspired by the iconic songs of George Gershwin. Here is The Man I Love, a testament to Wild's skill and creativity as a composer, performed by pianist Öykü Özlem Bugday. In 2025, Sonus began a tradition of honoring the teachers and mentors who shape the artistic journeys of musicians. This spring, we continue this legacy with a conversation between Sonus Artistic Director Nancy Roldan and Chad Bowles, head of the Preparatory Piano Department at the Peabody Institute of Johns Hopkins University. Their recent conversation in Maryland was sparked by the legacy of renowned pianist Earl Wild and the profound impact he had on generations of musicians. As one of Earl Wild's disciples, Chad Bowles shares intimate memories and insights into the teaching philosophy of this musical giant.
I am here with Chad Bowles, head of the piano department at the preparatory division of the Peabody Conservatory. It's an enormous pleasure to have you here with us. I am fascinated by your connection to Earl Wild. In particular, I want to know how Earl Wild influenced your career.
I think we have to go back to when I was a kid, actually, listening to recordings, and I remember very strongly hearing there was a CD that had the Brahms Ballades and the Paganini Variations and some Liszt Paganini Etudes, I think. And I listened to that incessantly, especially the Paganini Variations.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I would see a CD of his or something, I would beg my parents to get it, and they would, and it would be something that that I just listened to over and over and over and over, and I just could not believe the pianism and the power and the line and the connection. And of course, I didn't know what any of this meant when I was a kid, but the impression was there.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was studying with him, this was, I was in my early 20s at this point, and at this time I was emotionally kind of tied up in knots with my playing, and felt like I was very self-conscious when I was playing, and always thinking about, oh, this person's in the audience, they're not going to like it if I do this, or they're not going to like it if I play this piece this way or that way. And I think he sensed that in me when we were working together. And he stopped me once in the lesson and he said, Chad, you have to play the way that makes you happy. You can't please everyone. You can't make everyone in the audience happy. What you have to do is play the way that makes you happy, and the audience will come along. They'll be with you. If they feel, even if they're not musicians, if they feel that you're committed and that you feel they're getting the energy from you, that you're doing what you love and the way you feel it should be, then they'll come with you. And that was like a bomb going off in my brain when he said that. I spent many weeks thinking about that comment after that lesson, and he was right. He was right. From that time, I really started to focus on what made me happy in my playing and what I wanted to express. And he was right. People do come along. They do.
And what motivates you to teach?
Two things, I guess. One is I want people to love music as much as I do. Plain and simple. I want my students to enjoy the craft and the art and all of the hours spent working on these things. I want them to enjoy it. I want them to do it not because their parents are telling them to, or not because they feel like they have to, because they love it. And I feel like that's a big part of my job, is to help them find music in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And the other part is that I love to help people. I love it when people come to me Even I've had students come to me who are not studying with me. What do you do here? What's your finger
Right.
here? How do you play this passage? And I love helping people in that way. I love the moments where you see the light bulb go on.
Mm-hmm.
That's really motivating.
When they say, I found it.
Yeah,
I
I can do it
discovered
now.
it, and
Yeah.
you've been saying these things, and but once it's their own, is when that happens.
Sure.
Yeah, I like the idea of collaborating.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, it's like parenting. You know, you need to allow teachers to help and to be companions along the way, and in allowing kids to develop in their own way, because otherwise it's just torture.
Well, that's one of the most important things I think about being a good teacher, is allowing your students to be themselves, to discover themselves, to find what they love. I have students who enjoy one composer over another, and if they enjoy that, I want them to experience it. I'm not making every student do the same regimen. I want them to be themselves, and I want them to work in a way that makes them happy, and I think that's extremely important.
Is there anything else you would like to leave us a message for? I think for professionals, for collaborators, for teachers, and for students.
You know, I have to say, as a teacher, as a performer, as someone who sees both sides of the arena, my number one advice to people is to be kind. Be kind. Be supportive. Allow people to find themselves. There are so many teachers who are just holding their students back. I've had so many students who have come to me and said, my last teacher destroyed me. I need someone to help. Even just the demeanor of the teacher being imposing, and the master, and you need to do what I say, and if you come in unprepared, then that's unacceptable. And I really don't think there's any place for that kind of thing in music, and I have no tolerance for teachers that berate their students or tell them they're not good enough, or they don't work in the way that they should. Or I think our job is to be supportive and to hold out our hand and say, come with me. I'm going to show you what you need to see. And I've had wonderful results working that way.
The more we teach, the more we learn. And it's something all great performers have realized, and they say, including Mr. Wilde.
Everything helps everything else. Being a performer helps your teaching. Teaching helps your performing.
Yeah.
Everything works together.
changes.
Yeah, sure.
Well, thank you so much for this moment, and we hope to have you back.
We close this tribute to Earl Wilde with his transcription of George Gershwin's Fascinating Rhythm, performed by Andrew Gerla.
Hi, I'm Andrew Gerla, and in this video I'm going to be taking a very brief look at a few of the pioneering American composers who drew inspiration from folk and popular music and helped to create what we think of today as that truly American sound. Early American classical music flowed directly from European models, so it was natural that American composers generally imitated the rich European classical tradition. But for a country whose identity was so rooted in its sense of independence, early pioneers in search of a truly American sound were surprisingly few and far between. Not so surprisingly, the composers that did attempt to break free from purely European traditions often turned to the folk traditions already flourishing in the young nation, traditions that included Appalachian folk music, Western cowboy tunes, songs of Spanish and Latin American heritage, Southern popular music, often themselves derived from European salon music, and the rich traditions of African American music, from blues to spirituals to gospel to the birth of jazz in the 1920s. The earliest attempts at an American sound did not end up being embraced by American composers as a whole. The Louisiana-born piano virtuoso Louis Moreau Gottschalk, who brought the Creole and African-American melodies of his youth to the salons and concert halls of Europe in the 1850s, was a popular sensation, but a novelty rather than the beginning of an American musical identity. A few decades later, Scott Joplin melded European Romanticism with African American rhythms in his wildly popular Rags and Piano Miniatures. And his trailblazing opera Treemonisha brought rural black music of the late 19th century to the grand opera stage. But it would be decades before another African-American composer would achieve this kind of recognition on the concert stage.
Oh, je feel like you've been redeemed. Ain't you glad you have been redeemed?
In the teens, the sui generis composer/insurance salesman Charles Ives worked American folk songs and hymns into his piano, chamber, and orchestral works, but his music was widely ignored until into the 1950s. The vast majority of American composers during the first 2 decades of the 20th century were still looking east to Europe for inspiration, often studying with European masters and returning to the US appropriately trained. German Romanticism permeated much of their concert music, and sentimental salon songs dominated domestic music. It was the great French performer and teacher Nadia Boulanger who, in the early 1920s, when she was only in her 30s, started teaching her students to focus on cultivating their own voices, encouraging the young Aaron Copland's broad musical tastes and giving him the confidence he needed to strike out on his own. Returning to the U.S. after 3 years with Boulanger, Copland sought out artists in other mediums, such as Georgia O'Keeffe, the photographer Alfred Stieglitz, and theater artists such as Stella Adler and Lee Strasberg, in search of a truly American artistic voice. Early in his professional career, in the 1930s, Copland was called upon to write for the radio, a populist medium with an emphasis on narrative that demanded he compose music designed to appeal to a wide audience. One of his first popular successes was Billy the Kid, a ballet based on several cowboy tunes and American folk tunes, which premiered in Chicago in 1938. Copland's innovation was to take the germ of a folk tune and reduce it to its skeletal framework, rhythms, contours, pitch relationships, and then piece it back together using his extensive technical tools and the colors he had been exposed to in Paris, including the works of Stravinsky and Schoenberg. His use of syncopation, irregular meters, and cross-measure rhythmic patterns gave a new modernity to simple folk melodies, not to distort, but to offer a fresh point of view and a surprising sense of contemporaneity. His introduction of dissonance to these simple tunes was ingenious, clustering adjacent diatonic notes, notes from the same scale, or placing one tonal key on top of another, a technique called polytonality. With both of these techniques, familiar scales were always present, but juxtaposed in fresh ways. The formal experimentation, especially the use of dissonance, was always used lightly. That wider audience he was trying to reach was always in his mind, and Billy the Kid, as well as his hugely popular ballets from the 40s with Agnes de Mille, Appalachian Spring, and Rodeo, entertain from start to finish. Copland was initially drawn to American jazz and blues and used syncopation throughout his works, he isn't primarily thought of as a jazzy composer. That description goes to George Gershwin, whose compositional style was born from his years as a Tin Pan Alley song plugger and then songwriter with his brother Ira. A master melodist, his tunes were impeccably crafted and sounded like the young, modern America of the 1920s. as his attentions turned towards more serious concert music, he reached out to European masters just as the generations before had. But this time, those European masters, including Nadia Boulanger and Maurice Ravel, had the sense to refuse. Recognizing Gershwin's already fully formed musical identity, they didn't want to influence it in any way. Ravel himself used very Gershwin-esque jazz and blues passages in several of his own works. Gershwin's pop voice was rooted in the rhythms of Broadway and the harmonies of early jazz. For his concert work, he maintained and expanded upon his rhythmic complexity and brought in colors from the blues as well.
Natalie was a baby. Everybody knows. And when they see Thackeray coming, they give him the road.
The American blues originated around the time of the Civil War in black communities, drawing upon African song forms and a distinctive scale with similarities to West African music. It gained popularity in New Orleans and Mississippi during the first years of the 20th century, and in the 20s, recordings by female blues stars like Ma Rainey and Bessie Smith catapulted the form into widespread popularity. With Broadway, jazz, blues, and yes, every now and then a soaring romantic melody, Gershwin created a true American musical melting pot. For his hugely ambitious opera, Porgy and Bess, Gershwin and playwright DuBose Hayward delved deeper into folk traditions, living on Folly Island, South Carolina for a summer to experience Gullah culture's music and traditions. There, he was exposed to spirituals, church music, gospel hymns, work songs, and celebratory call and response structures, all of which he used throughout the opera. His orchestration for the opera also called for American folk instruments like the banjo, and jazz band writing with saxophones and jazz club effects like particular trumpet mutes to evoke the popular music of the time.
I got no car, I got no mule, I got no misery. Folks with plenty, got a lock on a door. Afraid somebody's a-going to rob while he's out there making more. What for?
During the 20s, when Gershwin was honing his Broadway and pop music skills, Arkansas native William Grant Still was also working in New York, playing and arranging for dance bands and in the pit of the landmark African-American Broadway hit, Shuffle Along. In 1931, his first symphony, The Afro-American, was premiered by the Rochester Philharmonic under the direction of composer and conductor Howard Hanson, the first time the complete score of a work by an African-American was performed by a major orchestra. In it, Still used blues progressions and rhythms to portray, as he described, not the higher type of colored American, but the sons of the soil, who still retain so many of the traits peculiar to their African forebears, who have not responded completely to the transforming effect of progress. He wanted to elevate the blues above what he thought was often considered a low-level genre. He begins that revolutionary symphony with a straight 12-bar blues form, and then goes on to mix major and minor modes throughout, a typical technique of blues songs. These 6 composers, Gottschalk, Joplin, Ives, Copland, Gershwin, and Still, took American folk music and used it to lay the foundations for a new, truly American classical sound. Subsequent artists over the second half of the 20th century and the beginning of the 21st have continued integrating and referencing American folk and popular music. Composers like Leonard Bernstein and Jesse Montgomery, who took Copland's wide-open dissonances in their own directions. John Musto, Wynton Marsalis, and Terence Blanchard, who incorporate jazz, rag, and film vocabularies throughout their works. And the pop collaborations and instrumentation of Julius Eastman and Caroline Shaw. Together, these composers are keeping a tie to the past while forging links with the present, and continuing to create an American musical world as vast and varied as the country itself.
Until next time, we leave you with a performance of Vaudeville Dancer. Lyrics by Carl Sandburg, composed and performed by Andrew Gerla at the piano, and soprano Cree Carrico.
And see if live
Thank you so much for listening. Please visit our website, become our friend, volunteer, and remember, your contributions in any amount are greatly appreciated. We welcome comments and suggestions about this and future programs. Join us in October for more Sparks of Inspiration, other Guastavino premieres, and unforgettable solo and chamber works by inspired storytellers from around the world.